third period, couldn't hold on to it. Story of the season, when they break down in a big way. And it's Anders Lee getting the power play goal, the winner for New York at Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. 4-3, Islanders win. The Penguins drop to 5-5-1, 1-4-1 is their record away from PPG Paints Arena, and still just the one regulation win in 11 games as they returned from that break. Their only regulation win came in the final minutes against New York, so they haven't held a lead and kept it for longer than a couple of minutes in some of these third periods. We all know, of course, they've had a hard time even taking a lead into the third period. They tied the score late in the second tonight. Evgeny Malkin, I know a lot of people were excited to see him get on the board. I know the Penguins were for sure. The top two lines in general did great work for the Pens. Jake Gensel appeared to put them in position for the win. Crosby on the setup there early in the third period, but P.O. Joseph and Chris Letang chase after the same player behind the Penguins net just moments after that. Kyle Clutterbuck's the beneficiary of that breakdown, and the only power play of the game comes on a delay of game penalty. And it all just fell apart there in the end for the Penguins. Tristan Jarry has a rebound get behind him on the shot from Ryan Pulock. The Penguins' PK still doesn't look comfortable with that new high-pressing format that they've tried this year under Mike Vellucci, one of their new assistant coaches. And Anders Lee is right there on the spot to pound in the rebound. So that's how it ends up. The Islanders had an early lead. They led 2-1 through 1. The Penguins had an outstanding second, and I thought third period too. Possession-wise, territorially, scoring chances, everything was in their favor, honestly, as I'll get to in just a moment, but not enough for the win. And as I just tweeted out, they deserve better, I think, but in a lot of ways, deserved has got nothing to do with it because you've got to convert those key moments. And to get those points in the standings, the Penguins have only done it at home, basically, so far this year. This is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Good to be back with you. It's been a while for me. I know that. It's been a while for the Penguins. Unexpectedly, with the COVID postponements involving their two games against the Devils that were supposed to happen this week. The Penguins practiced all week on their power play, and they get no power play chances in their return to the ice. Isn't it funny how that happens? Now they'll have more time to work on everything, whatever they want to, because, again, the Devils' issues with COVID have basically pushed them off the NHL calendar for right now. Dan Kingerski will join me. He of Pittsburgh Hockey Now fame. Right now he's taking part in the post-game press conferences, of course, remotely, as so many are. Sports coverage is a different beast these days, just like life is a different beast. And we saw the Penguins tonight go into a place where they've had a good deal of success, not just Nassau, but on the road against the Islanders recently. It's been kind of a weird series in that way since Barry Trotz took over. And tonight was the best offensive pressure, sustained offensive pressure, I think the Penguins have had against Barry Trotz's Islanders in, the 3 seasons since he's taken over there. The final shot totals, shot attempts, 50-38 for the Penguins. On goal, 25-21, not quite as impressive. Scoring chances, though, the Penguins had an 8 chance edge, according to natural stat trick, their accounting there. High danger, the Penguins had 15 high danger chances, and it felt like it. It felt like this game could have been 6-5. We saw both goalies in a lot of instances look decent, but then also when it came to trying to bail out some of their teammates, it didn't quite happen. Jarry actually had a couple of saves, to be fair, in the second period that were outstanding. Eberle and Lee on some of those breakdowns the Penguins had. Like I said, when they have broken down this year, they've given up some glorious looks. And it's the story of Tristan Jarry's season as well. That was his 7th start, and his save percentage still lingers around .850. That's clearly not going to get it done. And I know goaltending does not come without context, and I don't want to say that it's all been Jarry's fault, but it's never all the goalie's fault. And sometimes maybe you got to hold on to a puck, pin it between your pads, even if your penalty kill in the situation that we saw late in this game, even if your PK gives up a great one-time look for one of the harder shooters in the league, certainly on the Islanders, Ryan Pulock. And sometimes you just got to rise to the occasion there. And that sometimes is not happening right now for the Penguins. I do want to talk about some bright spots this evening for sure. Like I said, the top 2 lines were excellent. And Brian Rust at one point, if you look at shots for and against when he was on the ice, he was 20-4 in the third period. That's good, in case you didn't know. I want to check in on that and see some of the Penguins leaders there for the full game, because it was something else. Yeah, Brian Rust, when he was on the ice, 22 shot attempts for, just 6 against in 15 minutes, just over 15 minutes of ice time. Of course, Crosby's part of that line. So is Jake Gensel. All of them were well over 70%. Corsi 4 in this one. And Malkin and Kapanen, they're developing some connections there. They're figuring each other out, how they like to play. Kapanen has been a revelation for me. P.O. Joseph, don't want to gloss over that, scores his first NHL goal. My biggest takeaway from the playoffs last year against the Habs was that the Penguins' D was a non-entity in the offensive zone. Joseph can't do it all himself, but we're seeing him join the rush. We're seeing him show a knack for getting shots through from the point, not being so predictable in that way. The Penguins' D are pretty pedestrian when it comes to that fact. They don't get a lot of shots through, and P.O. Joseph has been a breath of fresh air in that category. A B12 shot, as I said earlier in the evening. And Joseph and Letang, outside of the egregious breakdown on the Clutterbuck goal, they were good tonight. They controlled play. They dictated 17-10 in shot attempts for Joseph. And for Letang, it was 20-13, a little bit better. So, yeah, goodness, so many good things. And it felt like one of those games that was just building toward a positive crescendo for the Penguins. And it just doesn't happen in the end. So I hate to just say, well, trust the process so much, but I do have to say that tonight. I don't feel so bad about that performance at all. I don't think the Penguins should either. But the problem is, as we all know, the season's shorter, and they're 11 games in. Normally, that's, 1/8 of the way through. This time around, it's about a fifth of the way through the season. So they're not exactly in a terrible position in the East Division right now. Coming into the night, they fell a little bit back from a playoff spot because they took a couple of games off, a couple of game nights off with those postponements against the Devils, and we'll see that again this week too. But points percentage-wise, they look okay. And like I've said a couple of times, it's not going to take a huge amount of points to make the playoffs in the East, because I think these teams are going to beat each other up. I think they're going to take care of each other in a lot of ways. And we're going to see right around 500 probably. NHL 500, not exactly true 500, but you know what I mean. What the Penguins are right now, 5-5-1, even though they've lost one more than they've won. I think right around there is going to be enough to get them in. The problem is that they're going to put themselves in a position where there's going to be some must wins down the stretch here. And the Pittsburgh Penguins have not been in a position to have must wins late to make the playoffs very much, if at all, in this stretch of making the postseason, 15 consecutive seasons or whatever it is. So Penguins lose tonight. They still are actually in that fourth spot in the East Division. They are 1 point up on the Devils still. So the Devils being idle has helped out the Penguins too. But the Islanders crawl within one of the Penguins with that regulation win. And in fact, that fourth place standing is, I think, artificially comfortable, because you have the Penguins 11 points, then you have the Devils, the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Sabres. All four of the teams behind them all are tied with 10 points as we speak. So one of those teams gets a point or two in the coming days, and the Pens will be officially of a playoff position. Remember, you got to be in the top 4 out of 8 to make it. Remember, you can comment. You can give me your takes and takeaways on the Penguins' return to the ice here. We have the live chat going here on YouTube, of course, and we are streaming on Facebook. We are streaming on Twitter via Periscope. So enjoyable stuff to be back with you. Like I said, it had been a while, and we were looking forward to that rat-a-tat nature of this season. At least I was. I like the every other day rhythms, but we also had to be ready for something like this. And I thought the Penguins came back with pretty good legs. It seemed like they were able to handle the Islanders' neutral zone forecheck better than they ever have. They generated off the rush. They generated especially off in-zone possession time. And I thought took it to the Isles for most of the night, but it ends up being a 4-3 loss, of course. Let's go to some of your comments here. Dave Gormley, Walt Flanagan, they're in here. Walt Flanagan saying, I guess there were some positives. Gino and Pierre Olivier scoring. P.O. Joseph. Yeah, Malkin got a couple of shots away off some slick setups from Kasperi Kapanen. So those two could definitely play catch a lot more, and I would enjoy that very much. I thought Crosby shot the puck more, and it opened things up. Brian Rust could have had 2 or 3 with all the opportunities that he had, but the Penguins still get stuck at 3 goals. They haven't been able to push past that mark in a little bit. Arav Chabra also chiming in as well. We have some new viewers here on our YouTube channel, Pittsburgh Sports Live, by the way, in case you couldn't read the background. And, well, Arav says that's pathetic. As a fan, they only play twice in 2 weeks. Well, that's just how it goes right now. We have teams contracting COVID left and right, especially in the East Division. It's starting to get pretty dicey, and I wonder if things get a little bit worse, can the NHL continue on like this with several teams now on the shelf? I believe it's 4 that are currently taking a break, if you will, an unexpected break due to COVID. And that's not even factoring in teams like the Penguins, because of how the schedule is. You play the same team back-to-back almost the entire season. Then if you miss 1 game, you're probably going to miss 2. It's difficult. Gormley says, can't let Cal Clutterbuck beat you. Just can't. No, that best 4th line in hockey, quote-unquote, for the Islanders, it's kind of damning with faint praise, isn't it? Right? When you say, well, if they're the best 4th line, why aren't they the 3rd line or the 2nd line? That's always been a kind of a bugaboo for me on the labels that we put on some of these lines, especially 4th lines. They get too much credit sometimes. But I had just gotten done saying you get the Crosby line out there against Cizikas, Clutterbuck, and Martin. That's a win for the Penguins. Then Clutterbuck, Cizikas, and Martin go down the ice and score. So not a good omen for the rest of that game after the Pens gave up the equalizer. Because once they got their noses ahead 3-2, it really felt like a game where they got that ball rolling and the boulder was rolling downhill and everything was going their way. They didn't play a great first period, but second and third were pretty outstanding. And you hate to waste games like this is what I'm trying to say. Then they also had, as Ryan G is alluding to here on YouTube, there was an opportunity there for the Malkin line to get a 4th goal, but Zucker made one too many passes. Jason Zucker, a guy who has made his living shooting the puck, suddenly decided he wanted to try to one-touch it right back to Malkin on that 3-on-2 rush. Instead, it ends up bouncing away from Malkin, and the Islanders quickly go the other way. And it wasn't right on that shift that they scored the tying goal from Clutterbuck, but it was pretty close. And you want to make sure you take advantage there. Up to that point, they had done well in getting pucks on target and testing Semyon Varlamov, who was okay at times and other times looked like he could be had this evening. Gensel beating him cleanly. We also saw Malkin rifling one to the top shelf. Same with Pierre-Olivier Joseph. So Varlamov was beatable tonight, and for some reason Zucker decided to pull up and not take the shot. Anyway, I want to go to Twitter and see if any of you have posted anything. I know that Dan Kingerski is joining us in a short period of time here after he takes part in the post-game press conferences. Looks like Joseph is doing his right now. I have the AT&T Sports feed on behind me. Taking a look here from the mobile home office. Of course, we'll hear from Mike Sullivan too. Always tough to tell who they're going to throw out there. It used to be the reporters had their run of the room for the most part. If you could track down a guy before he ran to the showers, then you could talk to him. This time around, you get who the PR staff gives you. All right. Walt Flanagan saying that the NHL and the NBA really should have their players get the vaccines ASAP. I know that they're working on it, right? But you also want to have the most vulnerable of the population get it. And finely tuned athletes aren't exactly the most vulnerable of the population. Not that there can't be complications, but I know there's a lot of money at stake. We all love to watch these games, but can you in good conscience skip the athletes to the head of the line? I'm not sure about that. Macklefresh, there's a new name and a new face here, a fresh face. Macklefresh too. Talking about lack of bottom 6 scoring or any sort of offensive threat. Third line is realistically a 4th line, and the 4th line is AHL worthy. I don't like the 4th line at all. I know we keep talking about O'Connor and well, there's interchangeable parts kind of a thing going on with the 4th line at the moment. Not in a good way, because none of these players have really stood out. Mark Jankowski is a non-entity. He had one good chance in this game, which was his first in a few games. At 5-on-5, he's not doing much. He's been a good penalty killer. Or, well, I shouldn't say penalty killer. He's been a regular penalty killer because the PK hasn't been great so far. So any individual player probably can't be great in that case. But we're seeing more of that Mark Jankowski that barely mustered any shots on goal last year for Calgary, even though he put in 5. I think he had just 40 or 50 shots all season long. I was concerned about the Jankowski signing because I was concerned about the pace, honestly. And first couple of games, he was making a fool out of him, but last 9 games, not a lot to speak of. Tanev, Bluger, they've been playing pretty well, but that's probably a fourth line. The Penguins' depth just isn't quite there up front. It isn't as good as it has been. If Zach Aston-Reese comes back and he's effective and he's playing his best hockey, then it does help out. It does make for a more complete roster for the Penguins. But thin at the bottom of the forward line chart, and well, definitely thin on defense right now. The Penguins are trying to piece it together. And I almost said, well, I did say to myself in my living room when the Isles put the power play unit out there late in the third period, Chad Ruedel probably isn't your first or second or third or fourth or even fifth pick for the PK1 unit for the first PK. Force him over the boards. Nothing against Chad, but he's more of an offensively styled guy. He's not one to be a strong check in front of his own net. At least that's what I've seen from him at the NHL level. Good player, don't get me wrong. I think he's a fine player, and I think he's an NHL player. But I don't think he's a penalty killer. And you had him out there maybe if Brian Dumoulin's healthy, if Marcus Pettersson's healthy, someone with a longer reach and a better stick and a better ability to defend, then perhaps the puck doesn't go in the net there. But that's just not the reality for the Penguins right now. Their lineup is so depleted, particularly on the back end. Pierre-Olivier Joseph, P.O. Joseph, the first goal of his career tonight, but also a couple of noted slip-ups. He coughed the puck up in the second period, nearly led to an Islanders goal. Brock Nelson just missed the net. And then he and Letang, I'm not sure who's necessarily to blame there, but you have to figure some of that unfamiliarity between Letang and Joseph contributed to the defensive breakdown in the third Islanders goal. So, yeah, Joseph's going to have some hiccups, and it's not all going to be great, but I still think you've got to play him a lot. I think he gives you a great chance to put the puck in the net at the offensive end, and I think he's a decent enough defender at this stage, even very early in his NHL career, that you're not losing too much if you have him out there for 20 or even 30 minutes. Of course, the Tang back. I don't know if it's going to be that much time for PO. Tonight, he had a little on the positive and a little on the negative. Dan Kingerski is here. We're going to bring him in, have him join the crew here, the folks watching, along with myself, Matt Gajtka. Dan from Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Did you learn anything from the postgame press conferences that we didn't pick up from watching what was a dramatic game, one that the Islanders stole away from the Penguins at the very end?
Did I learn anything? Interesting question. No. But yeah, I think the takeaway, and Mike Sullivan hasn't had his chat yet, so I'll just I'll have to bypass it to chat with you instead, Matt. But I think the mood was very upbeat. I think they rightfully so felt good about their performance. They really were just a couple of very correctable mistakes away from dominating the Islanders and running them right out of the Nassau Coliseum.
I thought so too, Dan. I feel a little Pollyannish tonight because there's going to be focus on more defensive breakdowns, more egregious breakdowns. Tristan Jarry stole a couple away from the Islanders in the second period. Couldn't quite do it in the third period, but when the Penguins break down this season, they break down in a big way. Clutterbuck was practically in the net when he shot that one through Jarry for the third goal. But mostly I agree with you. Typically, I'm more of a quantity over quality type of guy. I believe in the quantity is what I'm trying to say in the world of hockey. It's an odds game. You just want to tilt the odds in your favor by playing more in the offensive zone, by limiting chances against, even if a couple of those chances end up being grade A. I still believe in piling it up. And the Penguins did pile up the opportunities. Brian Rust all around the net. The top two lines in general were outstanding. They were creating every time over the boards. The power play didn't get a single chance to show off whatever it was working on, trying to get shots through, trying to simplify over the course of the past week. And of course, so special teams are kind of a wash outside of the very end, of course. But yeah, 5-on-5, where the Penguins have struggled this season in a lot of ways. I felt great about it. What did you think was the big X factor for the Penguins in and just getting things going, because against the Islanders under Barry Trotz, they have not had this level of success in just rolling lines and continuing to pepper the opposing goalie.
Oh, Matt, I'm going to toss something off of you here. And back when you and I were covering the team for competing outlets, or you were covering it for a big outlet, and I was just getting this little thing here off the ground, this game reminded me a lot of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And especially maybe January of 2016, in which they were all over loose pucks. They were getting behind defense. They were getting chances, but they lacked finish. And they lacked that extra bounce, but they made up for it with a very good work ethic and superior speed. If the Penguins can play a lot like this, and I saw nothing tonight that wasn't replicable. I didn't see anybody out of their skates tonight. And I think that's actually a good thing. So with that replicable system and getting their feet underneath of them, going forward, Matt, look, once they get their blue line figured out and stop making these just jaw-dropping mistakes, it's kind of funny. Let's talk about that P.O. Joseph, Chris Letang crisscross on the Islanders' goal there. Was that the second goal?
Third goal, yeah.
Third goal, when they both went behind the net. Sorry, they all run together for me a little bit until I have them all in front of me. It's Chris Letang is going to take the bulk of criticism for that. But clearly, he made a commitment very early, and there might have been a switch called. Until we know the answer to that, we never will. Actually, it's impossible to know who to blame on that. And you also have Sam Lafferty, kind of standing there as a little bit of a spectator in the crease as well. So even if the defensemen make that mistake, you'd like to see Lafferty bail them out. So, it's just, they don't make a mistake. They put like 4 or 5 all on one play. That, I think, is correctable, though they do have some mistake-prone defensemen.
Well, you mentioned Lafferty. I couldn't even think of his name earlier because it just feels like that fourth line is interchangeable parts. Lafferty, Sevier, O'Connor. They're not doing a lot. And I know I talked about rolling lines. Even the third line, the Bluger line, had a nice night this evening, all things considered. There's still some rough patches. And I was saying before you came on that on defense, it's certainly a mishmash. I don't even know what you can say about it. They're trying to hang on. They're doing the best they can. I don't think Chad Ruedel was a penalty killer, but he was out there late because that's what they have right now. And he's one of your more veteran guys at this point. But they're just these little leaks, these small spots in the roster that are costing them, or these small moments that are costing them. So I do agree with your comparison back in 2016 when the ball got rolling and the Penguins seemingly just could not get the puck to go in the net when they were dominating play. And eventually it started to happen in March of that year, in April, obviously into May and June, things ended up pretty well. So you've got to trust it to a certain point as a team. You've got to even ignore the fact that, Dan, they're already a fifth of the way through the season. 6 games? They've played 11. So, yeah, pretty much a fifth of the way through. They can't let that get to them because I feel there's enough to build on here, despite the result and despite the fact that they haven't been able to get any points, basically, on the road so far. So that's the way I feel about it, too. I'm glad that there's some agreement there on the other side of this show.
Look, you would have liked to have seen them at some point lead going into the third period. You'd like to see them, they get a third period lead and they're dominating. They had 9 of the first 10 scoring chances of the third period through the first, 13, 14 minutes. It is a little bit of a problem. Marcus Pettersson, when he comes back, will be a very welcome addition to that blue line. I think he and Cody Ceci might form a wonderful, steady, stay-home sort of pairing for just those sorts of situations. Matt, let's talk a little bit about Cody Ceci, right? Because He was on deck to be the next Jack Johnson. The Wolves had circled the high priests of the Penguins' social media uh, bandwagons and lynch mobs had kind of gathered around Cody Ceci. They were kind enough to let him play 30 seconds before the chirping started, but he's been actually pretty good, hasn't he? I mean, I don't know if he could have gotten in front of Eberle on that first goal. Eberle had a pretty good head of steam, and I think Jari misplayed that more than Ceci did. But otherwise, he's jumping into the zone. He's moving pretty well. He's making simple plays. I really, I think he is earning himself a nice contract for next year from somebody. Probably not the Penguins because of the Penguins salary cap situation, but someone's going to see what Ceci is doing and like it a lot.
Yeah, that first goal that you were alluding to, the Eberle goal where Ceci was caught flat-footed, a lot of that's on the turnover committed by Lafferty there. I'm going to give Ceci a bit of a pass. This is what I hoped that Jack Johnson could be in Pittsburgh, actually, was a guy that you didn't really notice that much and was getting the puck off his stick in a hurry and is just minimizing, in general, his impact on the game. And I like that from Ceci. He's keeping it simple. And he's staying within himself, all those cliches they talk about. But when you're a player of his skill set, obviously he's an NHL caliber player, more of a bottom pair type of a guy, but he's been totally fine. So you look at some of the signings from over the summer, you look at some of the moves. Ceci wasn't at the top of my list as something that was good, but so far I slot him right behind Kapanen. Kapanen's been, I've called him a revelation a couple of times because he's just provided that spark. And I think we expected something from Kasperi that would catch your eye. Ceci is almost the opposite, though, and he's been so much in control of his game for the most part that it is noticeable. That's pretty rare for a guy of that caliber. You want him to get on the ice, make all the right plays, make all the routine plays, and then get off the ice. But I don't really have much to nitpick on Cody Ceci. So. Pretty good scouting there, perhaps, from the Penguins. I thought that he had a decent year with Toronto last year. So you look at a potential fit in Pittsburgh. I thought it could work, and it looks like it is so far there. So the depth on the blue line being tested in a big way. They got Mike Matheson back. They got Chris Letang back. Matheson continues to be a cipher for me, Dan. I don't know what to make of him. He's trying. He's making moves in the offensive zone. He's taking a few chances here and there. We're just going to have to get a nice body of work from Matheson is what I'm saying. I don't really know how you
cipher in this context for me.
Cipher, he's a mystery yet. I don't know how he's going to fit in. And I think that he needs to play his game, which is to get on his horse and take some calculated risks, but it is about decision making for him. So it'll come down to pairing. It'll come down to deployment. So far, I don't, at the defensive end, he's not going to impress you that much. But the point is that he does more at the offensive end to at least even that out.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of decisions from Mike Matheson that I don't like. I'm seeing a lot of the little things, those simple details, no matter what team you're with, that need to be made, the little plays. I'm seeing big warning signs, red flags with Matheson. I'm seeing a lot of stick lunging. So taking a step into the shooter or getting himself in position. I'm seeing him drift. I'm seeing him lunge. I'm seeing him just kind of throw the stick around. And he doesn't quite have that the same stick that P.O. Joseph does or Marcus Pettersson does, right? Matheson is about the same size, but for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to have that same reach to poke the puck away. And he left himself vulnerable several times tonight. One of them was the goal that Eberle scored. Matheson kind of drifted to a covered man near the circle. Eberle was wide open there in the crease. You'd like to see Matheson let his forward cover the initial shot, and it was covered. So it's those mistakes that are very concerning. You like him in the offensive zone. You like that tip play that he did, and you like to see him fly up and down the ice. So there's a base there. But he really is going to have to. I don't know what the words are, the adjectives. I don't want to say learn to play defense. That would be entirely insulting. But he's going to have to really up his focus and his decision making in the defensive zone, away from the puck, and in coverage, and really get stick on stick, not just stick on air, and get body on body. He's fast enough to do that. So I'm not going to grade Matheson in the report card tonight, but if I did, I would probably give him something below a C or C plus. I'd probably give him a C minus. I don't think I'd give him a D for a first game back, but I certainly wouldn't give him anything more than a C.
Look, it's entirely possible, probable really, that Mike Matheson is what he is at this point of his career, and he's not going to pick up some hockey IQ all of a sudden that he didn't have. But I think every player is always capable of playing smarter, at least a little bit. And I think a little bit of smarts for Matheson, a little bit of familiarity with the system too. He spoke to the media, a couple of days ago, and said the first two games were touch and go for him in terms of systems. So we do have to remember there was a limited training camp. He's coming in fresh here. It's a totally different way to play than it was down in Florida. So there's some leeway that I'm going to give him, at least when it comes to finding his comfort level and starting to play his game. Maybe his game still isn't good enough. There's entirely a possibility that's the case.
Matt, the level that Matheson has to reach because of his salary and his standing on the team, he has to be Justin Schultz for the last couple of years.
That's fair. Yeah.
He's not going to score 51 points. Well, actually, if he did, that would be cause for backflips. But he has to be at least as good as, or in the same ballpark as Justin Schultz. They won't be shut down defenders who play 25 minutes and rattle some teeth and take care of everything in the defensive zone. You're going to have a few gaffes and mistakes from here and there, but you at least have to be competent in the defensive zone. And from there, Matheson is teetering. He's borderline for me in the defensive zone, and so yeah, we have to keep a close eye on that.
Dan, before we sign off tonight, I did want to bring up your recent column on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. It's a PHN Plus column, so I don't want to give away too much, but I do want to provide enough to the folks
I'll make it free. How's that?
Well, okay. Well, I want to provide enough for the folks watching if they didn't read it. Your column's entitled, "Let's Really Talk About Yevgeny Malkin and the Penguins' Future." And you worded something about sports in a way that I hadn't really seen it before. So I wanted to ask you about that, if you could flesh that out or just elaborate what exactly you mean or how you came upon it. You talk about the grand bargain. First of all, you express your disgust that there is, to use your words, raucous anger being displayed against Malkin, who scored, by the way, tonight and had a pretty good game, but still hasn't been nearly the level the Penguins need him to be at. You talk about a grand bargain, quote unquote, in this column. I thought that was interesting. I never really had seen it phrased that way. You say they carry you, talking about the Stars, Malkin, Crosby, and Letang. You say they carry you for 15 years or more, then you have to carry them. It's loyalty. It's integrity. Now you're biting the hand that fed you after 10 games. So I never really heard it referred to as a bargain in that way. I get what you're saying, but I also understand the flip side of that too, where fans say, well, that's just big time pro sports, is when a player stops performing, then you got to start thinking about alternatives. And maybe you think about the fact that he's crested the hill and he's not coming back to that level that is required of a player of his stature. So what led to you feeling this way, basically, about Malkin didn't take all the money that he could have under the salary cap? That's also a part of it, but he's given so much. So you feel like even if he's not himself, even if he has a rough go here at the end of his Penguins tenure, however long that is, you still feel like fans should be absolutely behind him the whole way, it seems.
Well, I don't know that fans have to be behind any player. You're free to like, not like, or root for for whomever. But in the cases of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, they are quite unique in that they did leave more, and I don't want to say tens of millions of dollars on the table, but if you go back over the last 10 years and say, okay, they're underpaid by a couple $1 million, they did leave 10, 15, $20 million on the table just for the Pittsburgh Penguins to redistribute, to win. And also, so you have that. You have the players' display of self-sacrifice for the organization, in part also for the fans. Look, if you're playing in a city that 8 fans show up and it's $44 for 4 tickets, parking, 4 hot dogs, and 4 Cokes, Florida, maybe, a player doesn't do that. But because it is such a unique atmosphere in Pittsburgh, that the players do that, and they showed the loyalty. They gave first, right? They didn't take top dollar and kind of just shrug their shoulders like professional athletes do, because it is a business. These guys didn't maybe maximize the business. And so for 15 years, Penguins fans have packed the building to see 2 generational talents that it might be another generation or 2 before Penguins fans have players this good. They may never have players this good again. There's a lot of franchises around the NHL who haven't had a Mario, a Jagr, a Malkin, a Crosby, etc. So there's also that appreciation factor, and what the players gave, I think, to the fan base. 3 Stanley Cups. All of those things combined, generational talent, staying with one team, taking less money. The personal vitriol towards Malkin, I thought, was just low rent, low brow. I thought fans just kind of looked like Harry Potter's cousin on his 11th birthday. I want 37 presents. That's a reference for the Gen Xers, or the Gen Y, rather. I've not watched more than 15 minutes of Harry Potter. I had to look it up.
Here's my theory on this.
It's a bad look for Penguins fans when so many others have never had this level of success or this level of talent before them. Here is talent that gave back. And after 10 games of the season, people were, trade Malkin. I've been saying trade him for years. He's terrible. He sucks. And there was a part of me that just wanted to say, shut up. Shut up, sit down, shut up, and appreciate what you've been given.
My theory on it is that if Malkin were the best player on the Penguins, if he were the captain, he would get more leeway. But I think he's naturally going to pale in comparison to Sidney Crosby, who's maybe one of the top 3 or 4 players in the history of the game by the time he's done playing. So in a lot of ways, I think Malkin's thrived in the quote-unquote shadow of Crosby, but in other ways, he doesn't get that leeway because he's not the best player. Now, at times, he has risen above Crosby's level, but Sid has been just robotic, metronomic in his consistency over the years. And even though I don't think Sid's been at his best in these opening 11 games, he's certainly been more consistent, and he's certainly been better overall. So it doesn't surprise me that you see Malkin get, I suppose, because someone's always got to be the golden boy, and someone's got to be the favored son. And it's always going to be Sid here in Pittsburgh. And if it were a different situation and Malkin were just here by himself running the show, then I think he would get that benefit of the doubt because he is the top guy. So I think it's complicated by the fact that there is this embarrassment of riches here for the past 15 years.
What happens, Matt, when Sidney Crosby does take that big step back? And he goes from
he gets more leeway. I really do. I think he gets more leeway from the fans. I think partially because he has shown a more consistent work ethic. Let's just be honest about it. And I think partially because he's just been that one step above, and he's always been, well, he wasn't the first piece to fall in line because Malkin was drafted first, but he was the first guy to show up, you know what I mean, as part of that renaissance. He and Fleury, but Fleury is gone at this point. So
well,
there's some other factors here besides just because what you say about Malkin is true. All of it's true. He deserves better, but I'm just not sure he's ever going to be in that top favored spot here in Pittsburgh. That's just how it is.
That's fine. I'll compare it to Jaromir Jagr.
Yeah, I think it's a good comparison.
Treated him, I thought, terribly at the end, never understanding that the Penguins couldn't afford to pay him. The biggest part of that trade with the Washington Capitals back in 2001 was the duffel bag full of cash that came to the Penguins. Maybe literally, even. I've heard some crazy rumors through the years, bouncing off the halls down there at the arena. They booed Jagr for years. And it's just such a terrible look. And I know my colleagues around the league look at that and shake their head. And I get texts, "What's up with your boys in Pittsburgh?" I'm like, "What, you mean the players?" They know, "No, your fans. What is with this stuff?" And I'll get a tweet or something like that. I'm like, what is going on? Look, Matt, straight up, the rest of the league is looking at Pittsburgh like a 2-year-old on the carpet having a nutty in the middle of the mall. That's kind of how people are looking at Pittsburgh sometimes. And I'm just maybe saying, don't.
Well, I enjoyed the column, and I hope folks check it out there, PittsburghHockeyNow.com, because it is complicated. It's tough. And we all know that these guys aren't getting any better at this point. They're trying to hold on to what they have, and that's a metaphor that applies for the Penguins as well as a team. They couldn't hold on to what they had tonight. That was a 3-2 lead early in the third period, a glorious lead in the third period. There haven't been many of them. Jake Gensel provided it, but not enough. The Penguins lose it in regulation, 4-3. That one stings. And now they're just 1 point out of the basement, believe it or not, in the East Division. And they don't play again because of the Devils' situation with COVID until Thursday coming up. Another long break. They'll be back at Nassau Veterans Memorial on Thursday night against the Isles. Part of a stretch of 7 consecutive road games for the Penguins. They'll be able to return home, short trips, long breaks between in some cases. But still, this is a challenging stretch, and this could be a defining stretch for the Pens. They lose the first one after their COVID-induced break, and they'll get back to the drawing board again this week. Look for Dan's work at PittsburghHockeyNow.com. Thank you, Dan. Hope to talk to you on Thursday. Hope to be back with you on Thursday for more Pittsburgh postgame. And what do you have planned for the postgame coverage here? Do you have another breakdown as well in addition to the recap?
Yeah, it's I've been doing this for the last half an hour. Usually I fly by the seat of my pants based on the game. I think a report card is in order tonight in addition to the postgame. And tomorrow we're going to write a little bit about P.O. Joseph. We're going to write a little bit about the NHL schedule over the next couple days. And I did ask Mike Sullivan today if, because the Penguins are going to play 20 games in 37 days, Sullivan got me today. He spanked me a little bit, I think. Well, he did maybe a little chirping. Because I asked, well, hey, it's not done in hockey, but basketball, they'll rest a star player. Could you do something like that? And he responded, well, we can do anything we want.
Good point, Mike. I'll have to watch the video now. I missed that one today, so I'll have to check that out.
But we will take a look at the Penguins' schedule, and he gave a little bit longer of an answer after he took me to the woodshed, and we'll take a look if it would make sense for the Penguins to rest Crosby for a game or two, or Malkin or Letang or anybody when you play 20 games in 37 days. And it's not a Stanley Cup run.
Yeah, that's your typical playoff schedule if you're going 7 games every round, too.
Yeah.
Intensity is not going to be quite to that level, but at the same time, this is the challenge, and I think we all expected at some point it was going to get congested. It's going to get congested earlier than perhaps we thought. Okay, so like I said, Dan's coverage at PittsburghHockeyNow.com. You can find more of what you're watching right now. We had 3 Pittsburgh postgame shows today. In fact, all on the channel on YouTube, and we'll continue to stream live, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. For Dan, this has been Matt saying good night. We'll talk to you on Thursday for another Penguins edition of Pittsburgh Postgame.